Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching using the emotional focused therapy method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one session in both French or English and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found on lifecoachdanamzalak.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our sixth episode of season 24, a very special guest, author and meditation expert, Mr. Bob Martin. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Bob, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for the incredible amount of effort that it takes to put into a podcast and create one. And it gives a platform to, all of those who want to make a difference in people's lives. And without people like you making podcasts, we wouldn't have a platform. So I want to take a moment and thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much very much as well, Bob. And it's thanks to guests like you that we have amazing content and that people take the time to be able to listen to it, because anyone can have a podcast, but it's the quality of the guests that we invite that makes the whole difference from one over the other. So again, thank you for taking the time today. And I know that you were scheduled last week, but as you know, we had Hurricane Milton. So
Yeah.
it was kind of difficult to be able to do a podcast when we have no power.
Yes. So I think the question was, what brought me to meditation?
Correct.
So my whole story is a bit unusual, but in one respect, it's not unusual at all. So many of us are brought to some endeavor because a need develops in our life. And I was in Miami during the Cocaine Cowboy days, and I was a mob lawyer, and I was going out with my clients to a lot of discotheques and chrome and glass things and partying a lot. And my life was going south, and I was seeing a therapist. And I grew up in a family that was non-theist. We didn't really have a conversation around God or anything like that. And so I didn't have any background in that area. And so I was seeing a therapist and I asked him some advice. Well, it turned out that my therapist was the English language editor of a 72nd generation. Just think about that. Anything that's passed down through 72 generations.
Wow.
A 72nd master priest from the Shaolin Temple. And if you know anything about the Shaolin Temple, that's where Kung Fu and Tai Chi and all those kinds of studies come from. And it's a study of the flow of life. And I found out about his connection, and then I met Master Ni, and I was just scooped up by him. I studied under Master Ni for 8 years, and that's where I was introduced to many contemplative practices. I moved to North Carolina and started attending some Buddhist temples, and Buddhism has a lot to do with meditation. And so I started experimenting with meditation. And Dr. Dan, quite frankly, for many years, it was start and stop. It wasn't a steady practice. So I'm not anything that's real special. I'm not a super disciplined person. But finally, after some time of starting and stopping and trying and failing and trying again, I found a coach. And that made all the difference.
Okay.
And then I developed a consistent meditation practice. And at some point, a school of meditation reached out and asked me if I would take the training to become a teacher. And that was in Tibetan meditation, a very intense 2-year program, 30 minutes a day, 4 silent retreats a year. It was very intense practice. But I came out of it really having a practice and being able to teach it. Later on, I found another school of meditation that was developed at Duke University that was more specifically designed for the Western mind. No, it wasn't well, just sit and you will learn from your practice and sit for 2 years and then you'll know something. This was something they designed that it's 5 weeks, one session a week, 10 minutes of practice a day, something finite that we can wrap our heads around. So I went, I took the training, became certified in that as well.
Now, I know a lot of people when I talk to people about meditation, the benefits of it, some people say, well, I cannot just sit down and think of nothing. So explain the nothingness part of meditation. I mean, how do someone clear their mind to be able to just breathe and think of nothing for 5, 10, 15 minutes, which becomes a very big challenge for most, that their mind is constantly racing. So how do you detach yourself from the daily requirements of life and taking the time to meditate?
I would say that the idea of emptying your mind is something that's a goal that you won't achieve it unless you go to a monastery and sit for years and years. That just doesn't happen.
Okay.
If you're lucky, maybe all of the chatter in your mind might reduce down to background noise, but you never really get rid of it. And I think the idea of emptying your mind is, for beginners, it's certainly a misconception. Yeah, people think that meditation is a passive thing where I just sit and empty your mind. That's like, don't think of a white elephant. How can you not?
Yes,
The mere fact that you're trying not to think causes you to think.
correct.
What you resist persists.
Exactly.
And uh, meditation is actually a very active process of not emptying your mind, but watching your mind and learning to step out of your thoughts. And here's where the biggest benefit that I have found in meditation is that we spend our lives being our thoughts.
Okay.
I see something, and you work with a lot of folks around with their emotions and their reactivity to things. It's because something happens and a thought occurs in the mind automatically without any ability to stop it. It just happens. And based on that thought, you have an emotion, and based on that emotion, you have a series of other thoughts, and these run and control your life.
Mhm.
What we do in meditation is we watch that whole process occurring, and we see, after a time when we become skillful at watching it happen, we start to find places where we can intercede, places where, without trying not to think, but just noticing what our thinking is, and at some point it occurs to us that, well, that thought that I seem to have quite often, it just really isn't very helpful.
Mm.
And slowly, as we begin to notice it and we become more familiar with it, it's kind of like a bratty little kid who just wants to bother us. And when we ignore it, it goes away.
Supposedly. Ideally at this point, Bob. But it doesn't,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in some cases. But okay, so if someone wants to fall in a spiritual realm of, after going through months or years of meditation, when can someone says that they have mastered? And I know that the word master in meditation are not in sync, because people from Tibet and people from monasteries, they've been doing meditation for decades and they still have not mastered it. So when can you feel the benefit of meditation after you have gone through a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year? When do you see it?
When I teach my students, I see they get it in 2 to 3 weeks of sitting for 10 minutes a day and follow the basic instruction.
Okay.
The basic instruction is form an intention to put your attention on your breath.
Okay.
And then very quickly, your mind will begin to wander. Everybody always thinks that they've done something wrong because the purpose was to keep my attention and focus on my breath. But that's not where the healing occurs. The healing occurs when your mind has wandered and you notice that it wandered, and you can see that it has wandered and gently and non-judgmentally return back and begin again. It's the healing occurs in the noticing and the returning. And most people think that the learning occurs by forcing yourself, concentrating and trying to keep focus, but that's really not it. If your mind doesn't wander, and the wandering is a normal, absolutely evolutionary function that our brain has, which it learned when we were hunter-gatherers, because it's scanning for danger.
Okay.
It's always scanning. We're always scanning the environment. And so the fact that our mind wanders is just a normal function of the mind. Let me give an example that I think everybody would understand. Dr. Dan, have you ever been listening to somebody and you really want to listen to them, but then all of a sudden you notice that you're not listening to them,
It happens to
right?
us.
Have you ever been reading a book and after 3 pages realized that not one word that you read sunk in?
Every
Okay.
single time.
Okay. And do you notice that when you notice that you're not listening, there's a small little feeling, a startle, like a little feeling of startle, like we call that waking up.
Okay.
That's when you wake up from a fog of rumination and projection, thinking about what happened and what you're going to do and what you have to have for lunch and what you should have said and all that stuff. It's the waking up that we want to get familiar with again. And so you actually, when you're listening to somebody and you notice you're not listening and you have that little startle and you go back and start listening again, you have actually meditated. That is a meditative act. And if we can somehow recreate that act over and over and over again, the benefits grow out of that. And the way that we recreate it is we form an intention, like you form an intention to listen, we form an intention to pay attention to the physical sensation of breathing.
Okay.
And our mind wanders, and then we get startled. We're not paying attention to it. And the first thing that happens is we beat ourselves up. Say, wow, I lost my focus and blah, blah, blah. But after a while, you start to notice all those judgments that you have about yourself. And you are coached. If you have a good coach, they'll coach you to be kind with yourself and be gentle with yourself and gently bring your. So in this little exercise, what we're learning is what it feels like to wake up, the difference between waking up and being in a default mind, what it feels like to notice your judgments, what it feels like to intentionally gentleize, if I can form that word, make more gentle your thinking, then you begin to notice you're thinking more. And so as you're doing this, you're beginning to learn how to watch your thoughts.
Okay. I see.
And watching your thoughts is a different place from being in your thoughts. So what I can tell you is there for me after practicing, and you don't have to practice for that long to get to what I'm talking about. I mean, a few weeks of daily practice, 10 minutes a day, you get it. What I have that makes my life joyful and happy and efficient and effective and purposeful and meaningful and all those great things, what I have is this, that I can engage in life completely. I can be angry. I can be grieving. I can be sad. I can be joyful. I can be happy. And I can have all of that engagement with life while at the same moment I am detached from it and I am watching myself be angry. I am watching myself grieve. And from that place of watching myself grieve, I am calm.
Interesting.
And that's where the calmness comes from. It doesn't come from emptying your mind. It comes from metacognition, what you scientists call it,
Yes.
the process of watching, of thinking about your thinking.
So
When we
I have,
practice, huh?
I'm sorry, I have actually a series of questions here, Bob, because as you were talking, I said,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
is that waking moment part of self-awareness? Are you self-aware that you're detaching yourself from focusing to get back into the zone of meditating or your zone of breathing, and you're kind of like more realizing that, oops, for a moment there, I lost track and I have to bring back myself to the breathing. And is this at the same time, as you were saying, that you're seeing yourself from a third eye perspective? Is it some form of out of body experience?
It depends on whether you're looking at it from a spiritual or from a holistic or from a, provable perspective. I mean, scientists and psychologists all talk about metacognition, the process of thinking about your thinking or watching your thinking. And it's something that we all can do. I mean, we even reflect it in our language. What do we say? We say, I had a thought. I had a thought. Well, who is the I that had the thought?
Okay.
And so meditation is just the process of separating the creator of the thought from the thought so that the creator can have more say in the matter of what thoughts you have. And that's all part of the psychological work that you do with working with emotions and CBT
Yes.
and the like. So cognitive behavioral therapy is probably the closest thing that, let me put it this way. I think meditation, the practice of meditation turbocharges turbocharges cognitive behavioral therapy,
I see,
because you see that. Yeah, you get it.
I see definitely. So then, okay, is it preferable for many who start with meditation, Bob, to have some form of self-guided meditation where they could listen to some voices or some words of affirmation that allows them to be able to focus on those words with their breathing that will facilitate them to be able to reach the access to their subconscious mind, which again, getting into a trance, this is what you do. You access the back or the subconscious mind and you leave your consciousness apart for a few minutes, and then that will allow you to feed good thoughts. So when you are actually awake, the bad thoughts will not be able to enter your mind.
Yeah. So if the question is guided meditation helpful? And yes, it is. But what I tell my students is listen to the guidance until it gets in the way, until you understand the instructions so well that they become muscle memory and you get it. And now the guidance is not keeping track with your timing, the
Okay,
timing of your breath and the timing of your thinking. So when it starts to become an annoyance and it starts to get in the way, then let it go. And then you know it well enough by then, your inner voice
I
will
see.
give you the guidance.
I see. That makes
But yes, in the beginning, the repetition is vital.
okay. Now, some people on the call or some people that who's listening, they're wondering if is it better in the morning, afternoon, evening, during sleep that we should meditate? Because some people,
I'm sorry, I did.
okay, I'm sorry. Let me repeat. Some listeners might be wondering what is the best time to meditate? Is it morning, evening, what part of the day? Are you still there?
I found, yes, I am here. What I found is that I could not maintain a consistent practice unless I meditated in the morning. Now, I really don't know what the best time psychologically might be, but I know this, that if you can't do it consistently, it's not going to be helpful.
Good.
And for me, once the day gets started, I'm out of control. But before the day gets started, those are my hours. I own that time.
Okay.
And so I get up earlier than everybody else and I take my couple of hours with my dogs, with my meditation. I go and watch the sun come up. That's my time.
Okay.
And I wouldn't give it up for anything. But that's just me. Somebody else may find that a time during the day. But the important thing is Whenever you find a time that allows you to be consistent, that's the best time.
I see. Like a lot of people, like they feel like waking up early in the morning is like you said, like sometimes it's much more beneficial. But I found that the when you are just about to fall into the REM sleep and you listen to some words of affirmation as you get into that zone, this is when the subconscious mind opens up, and this is when you could get the best benefit from the meditation. But then again, this is me. I prefer, like, when I fall asleep, I let a tape like kind of loop all through the night until I wake up. So for people who are just starting, is there like a way for them that you would advise that they could use, like maybe if you have like videos on YouTube that could at least they learned from it, they could get acquainted to it? Because a lot of people say, oh man, I don't want to just sit down and think about nothing and just do like 5-10 minutes. For people to not think about something for even for 1 minute is too difficult, especially after with all the online things that they have or the social media and all. So what would you suggest, Bob? How they can get
Well,
today?
so I've written a short book that's free to your audience. They could just go to my website and download it. It's called What is Meditation? What it is, what it's not, is it for you?
Okay.
And read through it. Um, and there's a number of apps that are out there that are pretty good. One of the best that I think is called Balance.
Okay.
Balance actually is an AI mentor that will interview you and find out what your level of practice currently is, and then make daily suggestions and give you guided meditations that are helpful. And as you progress, they give you more and more. And it's a very, very good app. I think that's a great app. But I also think, just from my own experience, that there's nothing like getting a coach.
I see. Okay. And the coach will teach you what specifically? If someone's just wondering, is that what will the coach? I mean, like you have a life coach, you have a business coach, you have a fitness coach. So a meditation coach will do what exactly?
Yesterday I was at the gym with my friends, and he's a big gym rat, and he knows things. And I was trying to do a bench press, and I couldn't lift the bar. And he goes, "Well, you're starting too low, Bob. You need to move it up a little bit." And so he moved the rack up a little bit. And from that point on, I could do it much better. And I had a great workout. It was that little change, a little adjustment
Oui.
there made a huge difference.
Mhm.
So what a meditation coach will do is it will help you work through your misconceptions, like the idea that for I can't sit and empty my mind. Your coach will say, you don't have to. That's not what it's about. You don't have to empty your mind. Let's start with watching your mind. And it'll help you through the misconceptions and help you with the small adjustments to your thinking, because after all, this is thinking about your thinking.
Mhm.
So somebody that has, a few years experience of doing that is going to know what the tips and the tricks and the traps are to the process, and will help you through it.
So in your
Um, the
like,
the way that they developed at Duke is really unique, because when I teach meditation, yeah.
so when you teach meditation, what exactly in your school do you offer? Like in terms of you're like a coach for them, like in
So
yeah, go ahead.
so when I teach meditation, I give them an app, and on the app are all the guided meditation and all the resources that they need. We meet once a week. I teach them a technique. Hey, I want you to practice this technique 10 minutes. That's all. 10 minutes a day. It's guided, so you don't have to sit in the silence.
Mhm.
It's a guided meditation. And at the end of the 10 minutes, write me a couple of sentences of what that was like for you.
Okay.
The app then sends me that log, and the next morning I get up and I can give you feedback on your log. So
Interesting.
you might say, "Oh, it was a terrible meditation. I was distracted." And I might give you feedback that says, "Well, what did the distraction feel like?" and how did time go by when you were distracted? And I can ask questions and help them personalize what they thought was a problem was really a discovery.
Oh, okay.
And so, and it's encouraging when people feel they've been doing poorly. You can show them why. In my mind, all practice is good practice. you
Agreed.
can't you cannot have a bad session. You always learn something, and it's the coach's job to point out to you what it is that you learned.
That's amazing. And when it comes to the 10 minutes, does it grow to 20, 30, 50 an hour? What's the longest that people can reach after a certain time?
Well, what I say to them is, if you can get to 10 minutes and your mind is not wandering, in other words, if you develop an ability to continue to watch your breath for 10 minutes, then we need to go to 15 minutes.
Oh,
That's when we increase it. When your mind has stopped wandering for 10 minutes, then we need to get your mind wandering again. So we go longer. And then, 20, I mean, I've been meditating for years and years and years. I rarely will ever sit more than 30 minutes. Most of the time it's 20, 15 or 20 minutes in the morning.
okay, that
And
makes
then what's beautiful is that during the day, when I run into a time that might annoy me,
mm,
I just bring my attention to my breath, and I let it all go by. I let it pass me by. And
beautiful.
so all during the day, there's a little minute here and a couple of seconds there, and I like, because it's a tool now that I have to keep myself grounded.
Now, before we conclude the podcast, where can people
Mhm.
find you, Bob?
So you can. My website is A Wise and Happy Life,
Okay.
all one word, awiseandhappylife.com. And they can go there and they can find out all about me and find out all about my classes, but they can also download that free ebook.
That's what I was
And
going to
there's no obligation, there's no cost, there's no obligation. It's a gift from me to your listeners.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Bob, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thank you again for participating and inspiring our many listeners with your incredible knowledge of meditation. Now, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode. And I'm also very excited about the many upcoming guests that we have scheduled for season 24 of the Happiness Journey podcast, filled with inspirational stories just like the one that you listened today. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. Daily meditation is a powerful practice that transforms both the mind and body. By dedicating just a few moments each day to mindfulness, you create space for inner peace, clarity, and emotional balance. It helps reduce stress, increase focus, and cultivate a deep sense of calm, even amidst life challenges. Meditation teaches you to be present, reconnect with yourself, and approach life with greater awareness and gratitude. Over time, it enhances mental resilience and nurtures overall well being. The beauty of meditation lies in its simplicity. Just a few minutes can lead to profound, lasting benefits. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.